Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Life Course. My name is Henry.
And I'm Dave.
It's great to have you joining us as we explore what is life, as we explore what Jesus has to do with life, and as we explore some of the big questions about life. I'm really looking forward to it.
So am I.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a great time. So over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be digging into what life is all about some of the big questions, seeing what does the Bible have to say about them? Why should we even listen to what the Bible has to say about them? And so it'd be great if you can join us for all of these 4 weeks where we're going to be doing that. But so tonight we'll be spending some time hearing from Dave. Dave's recorded a short talk during the week.
You can tell I'm wearing a different shirt.
Yeah. So get excited for that. You know, you're going to be exploring a bit about what life is about, asking some of those big questions, and then after that we'll come back and we'll have a Q&A. And this will be a great time that if you want, you can ask any question about what's the deal with Christianity? What's the deal with God? What does that have to do with my life? Feel free to ask any question. There's no stupid question. There's big questions, small questions, and we'd love to answer all of them.
How would they do that?
Yep, so the way that they would do that is by texting the question line that is on the screen right now. Dave and I have got a phone here, and we'll be answering them after the talk as the questions come in. So we'd love to hear from you guys and love to hear the questions that you have about life. But so, Dave, you're going to be speaking to us.
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm getting very close to 50. I'm married. I've got 4 sons, aging from 16 through to 22, and I guess, and I'm an Anglican minister, so I'm the senior minister here at Christchurch Gladesville, and that's kind of what I do for a living.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what's something that maybe you've done since lockdown ended, Dave? You know, it's been pretty great, hasn't it?
I tell you what, you can just feel it in the air that people are just, there's a new energy coming about, which is great. So last Wednesday, my 4 sons and I went to the movies. So my wife, as you can imagine, someone who has 4 sons, she's sick of seeing superhero movies. So she said, "You guys go, I'm not." And so we all went off to Macquarie Centre and watched Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings. The new Marvel movie, and it was great. In the cinema, it was probably one of the safest places you could ever be because there's virtually no one else there. So even though everyone's meant to be nervous because it's all COVID times, anyway. So it was really good. Enjoyed it. It's great to be out to the movies. I think I'm going to go this week as well.
That sounds awesome. You have to tell us next week about how the next movie goes.
That's it.
Okay. Well, Dave, can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah. So I've been in full-time Anglican ministry since about 2003, so about 18 years. Before that, I did a 4-year degree in theology to prepare me for that role. And then I guess, but I had a degree from when I was younger, and that is I'd done a science degree, and I'd done a major in geology, but I also did a major in psychology. So the old joke was that I was there to work out whether people had rocks in their heads. I could tell you what kind of rock it was that they had in their head. But it was actually really, really, really good. I got to study other things while I was doing that science degree, like chemistry and marine science and history and philosophy of science and things like that. And so I'd always loved science. I still do. I enjoy it. And also you get to interact on the God question a whole lot. And so there's so many people that, geologists will either be Christian or tend to be very anti-Christian. And so it was quite an interesting time there studying at Sydney University when I did that. So that's kind of my background, science background. Then I've gone into the ministry and I've been doing that since my 30s. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. But so, like over our time tonight and over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at what the Bible has to say about life and what Jesus has to say about life. And one of the questions that sometimes comes up about this is, well, so we have all these people walking around calling themselves Christians. Well, what is a Christian, Dave?
If I was going to summarise it, it's somebody who has put their trust in Jesus Christ, who recognises that Jesus is not just a guy, but that he is the Son of God who died on the cross for them and rose again, and that they believe that, and that belief has moved into trust, that they actually believe that he is God and that he is the one that they need to give their lives to, and that he'll look after them as they do. So it's somebody who has put their faith in Jesus Christ.
Yeah, no, that's a really helpful way for us to start going, okay, like let's we're going to be looking at the Christian view on what actually is life all about. Yeah. And so it's a really helpful way, just, okay, this is what a Christian is. Yeah. But so Dave, there's two more kind of similar questions that I have to ask that can kind of go together, which is, why are you spending your time on a Monday night wanting to chat with people about what life is all about? And on the same thing, maybe you're someone who got invited by a friend. Why did that friend think that that I should be invited?
I think I'd say in a nutshell, because it's true. I certainly would not be here if I didn't think that it was absolutely true that Jesus really did live, he really did die on a cross, and he really did physically, bodily rise from the dead. We've spent the last 2 years confronted with that there is a reality out there that we just need to come to terms with, and that's been this COVID virus. Right, so that you can sit there and decide that it doesn't exist, but there's 4.5 million people that are dead around the world because it does, and those that want to deny its existence will be faced with it anyway. So there's and this touches on really what we're going to be addressing in the talk tonight. We might like to think the truth is what we make it, and what we decide it is, but truth tends to hit us in the face with its reality. And the thing I want to say is that and this is not a negative truth like COVID. The wonderful truth is that there really is a God, and you actually can know this God. He's actually revealed himself to us. And if there is a God and that God has revealed himself, then there cannot be anything bigger and more important to actually know in your life. So that's why I'm here. That's why I do this full time. I 100% believe that it is true. It is wonderfully true, but it is extraordinarily relevant to everybody. And that includes anyone who believes he exists or doesn't exist. He's still there and he's still real, and we will still face him. So that's why it's the truth you can't ignore.
Yeah.
Or at least you mustn't.
Yeah.
You can try to ignore it. Yeah.
Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing more in just a moment from you, Dave. But normally we would have loved to do this course in person. Yeah. We would have loved to see all of you here at church and gotten to know you personally. That would have been great. And we might have actually started by asking a couple of questions for you to sort of think about with some of the people around you. And so actually it might be helpful for us just to ask it and for you to ponder as we start the talk. And that's the question for tonight, which is, what is the good life? And the follow-up to that, who has that? Okay, well, we might actually hand over to you, Dave, but you in the past. So let's have a listen.
We're calling this series Life because really that's what all of us are chasing. We're all after the good life. And can I say that that's something that Jesus himself had a lot to say about? We all want a life that knows and appreciates joy and beauty. We want a life that's got real hope, and real hope that will stand up when we're facing hardship and suffering. We also are after a life that's got love in the middle of it and that's full of peace and contentment. That's the kind of life we want, isn't it? That's the life that Jesus talks about. The difference is that Jesus doesn't say, hey, look, here's a few tips, and if you follow them, it'll make your life better. He doesn't say, here's how you need to understand me. You need to understand me as your life coach. Just think of me as kind of your manual on how to get everything right. He actually boldly claims to be the very centre of what that life is all about. And so I want us to spend today thinking about how a Jewish guy from 2,000 years ago is relevant for you when you think about your life now as a Sydney-sider all these years later. And so to get us there, I need to begin by getting us to think about something that's not necessarily that sexy or exciting, but is critically important. That is, I want us to start by thinking about truth. Because Jesus said, the truth will actually set you free. So check out this video and see what these people are saying about what truth is like.
So if I told you that I was a woman, what would your response be?
Good for you. Okay. Like, yeah.
Nice to meet you. I'd be like, what? Really?
I don't have a problem with it.
I'd ask you how you came to that conclusion.
If I told you that I was Chinese, what would your response be?
I mean, I might be a little surprised, but I would say, good for you. Like, yeah, be who you are.
I would maybe think you had some Chinese ancestor.
I would ask you how you similarly came to that conclusion and why you came to that conclusion.
I would have a lot of questions, just because on the outside I would assume that you're a white man.
If I told you that I was 7 years old, what would your response be?
I wouldn't believe that immediately.
I probably wouldn't believe it, but I mean, it wouldn't really bother me that much to go out of my way and tell you, no, you're wrong. I'd just be like, oh, okay, he wants to say he's 7 years old.
If you feel 7 at heart, then then so be it. Yeah, good for you.
So if I wanted to enroll in a first grade class, do you think I should be allowed to?
Probably not, I guess. I mean, unless you haven't completed first grade up to this point and for some reason need to do that now.
If that's where you feel like mentally you should be, then I feel like there are communities that would accept you for that.
I would say so long as you're not hindering society and you're not causing harm to other people, I feel like that should be an okay thing.
If I told you I'm 6 feet 5 inches, what would you say?
That I would question.
Why?
Because you're not. No, I don't think you're 6'5".
If you truly believed you're 6'5", I don't think it's harmful. I think it's fine if you believe that. It doesn't matter to me if you think you're taller than you are.
So you'd be willing to tell me I'm wrong?
I wouldn't tell you you're wrong.
No, but I say that I don't think that you are.
I feel like that's not my place as like another human to say someone is wrong or to draw lines or boundaries.
No, I mean, I wouldn't just go like, oh, you're wrong, like that's wrong to believe in it. Because I mean, again, it doesn't really bother me what you want to think about your height or anything.
So I can be a Chinese woman.
You. Sure.
But I can't be a 6'5" Chinese woman.
Yes.
If you thoroughly debated me or explained why you felt that you were 6'5", I feel like I would be very open to saying that you were 6'5", or Chinese, or a woman.
It's a fascinating video, isn't it? That's the air that we breathe in our society at the moment. It might have been said over in America, but you know that that's the same as the way it is here. You know, the truth really about who you are is whatever you want it to be. You make your own truth. You just come up with it. You choose it. But if that's the case then, and that we define the truth about ourselves, well then does that mean that we can also just define the truth about all of the big questions in life as well? That everything just comes down to what we choose or want it to be? See, every one of us have had those moments, haven't we, where we've stopped to reflect upon the big questions in life. You know, though, where did I come from? Who are we? Why am I here? How should I live? Where is my life going? Where is it all headed? Now, it might be that rare moment when you're walking outside and you're staring up at the stars and going, where do I fit into this universe? Or it might be that you've been confronted with something in your life that's caused you to ask these questions, something really challenging. And so how do we think about the truth? Am I just left to wander and discover it for myself, or is it really there? Are the big answers to the questions in life just whatever you like best? Are they whatever makes most sense to you at the time? Are they whatever's most popular? And you look around and go, what is everyone else thinking? Well, I guess that's what truth is. Or is it possible that there actually are only true, fixed answers? Answers to these big questions that will still be the answers regardless of what you're thinking at the time or what somebody else is thinking. That actually don't change with the mood of the person thinking about them. Because you see, the reality is the truth doesn't simply bend itself to our feelings and our preferences. Let me explain what I'm talking about. I want you to imagine if somebody steps out onto the roof of their house, no matter what time it is in history, no matter what their cultural background is, no matter what their belief system is, no matter how sincerely they believe that if they step out they're just going to float, no matter how many people around them are saying, we are going for you, we reckon you can fly, you won't fly, you won't float. You're going to hit the ground and you're going to hit it hard because that's just the truth of the matter. See, gravity isn't like Roadrunner. Remember the cartoon where they run out off a cliff and then they keep running and keep running, and it's only when they look down and they suddenly realise that they're running out on air that they actually fall. No, the reality of gravity is absolutely true and it's going to be true for you at all times. The truth of gravity also, it wasn't invented. So, the guy that's often famously associated with gravity is Isaac Newton, the guy with the apple and the tree. But Newton didn't invent the truth about gravity, he discovered it. It was already there and he discovered it. Well, is it also the same with those big questions that we're asking about life? Are there actually answers there that we actually don't invent or just come up with ourselves, we actually discover? We know the importance of truth actually in all parts of life. It's not just gravity. For instance, when you're at a doctor, are you happy if the doctor said, yeah, I think I'm in a mood to say that you've got this today? I'm just wanting to go along with the diagnosis that feels right to me at the moment. Or says, what do you want to have? Okay, that's what you've got. That's a doctor you're not going to go back to again, right? You want a doctor who's going to give you the objective truth about what's going on in your body. In fact, an approach to medicine that isn't based on truth is actually dangerous. So what is the truth about the good life? So if we can see that the importance of truth that is true, that it's true for all of us, whether it's gravity or whether it's medicine and so many other parts of life, why do we all of a sudden decide that truth is relative when it comes to these big questions? Why do we suddenly say things like, well, that religion might be true for you, but it's not true for me? As if when you're believing in that God, the God goes poof and appears, and then when this person doesn't believe in that God, they go, oh God, don't exist again for a little bit. Either there's a God there or there isn't. Either the God is the God that they follow or a different God. You can't just go which is different for you and you and you and you and you. We can't have life being all that we just ever make it up to be. Is it not possible actually that the big questions in life only actually have a true and right answer? And therefore there are wrong answers? And if so, don't you think that those, because they're the big questions of life, are the ones you really want to search out and discover the answers for? See, this is where Jesus comes in. He says that just like gravity is true for all people, there is only one true answer as to what the good life is. One truth about where you find deep, satisfying, lasting happiness. And he says it's actually all related to true worship. It's all connected with that. Now you might be thinking, well, worship is just for what religious people do. But according to Jesus, we all have functional gods or a God whom we worship. Whether we call ourselves atheists or whether we believe ourselves to be believers in God, there is always something that we devote our lives to, which is what the Bible talks about is actually worship. It might even be that the atheist worships atheism. Because, see, Jesus understands worship, and the Bible teaches that worship is really about what you revere, what you delight in and prize, what you dream about, where your heart is, what you give yourself to, time, energy, and money. They're your God or gods. That's what you worship. What you consider to be full of worth that you devote yourself to it. That's what the Bible talks about as being worship. And so by the Bible's understanding of worship, the question isn't will you worship or not, but who or what will you worship? And can he, she, or it actually satisfy those deep desires? Are they right focuses of worship or not? Now, much of what we worship we see in our community. It's like things like money and property, sex, power, popularity, possessions, experiences. And so many of those things that we devote our lives to end up disappointing us. They disappoint our deepest desires. They don't really fill it. But instead of acknowledging this and recognising that they can't be the answer, we're suckers. And over and over and over again, we keep returning to these enslaving lies. And that simply having more of them then is going to be the answer. I'm not satisfied, I'll go after it more. I'm not satisfied, I'll go after it more. Now, money isn't satisfying because as soon as you get it, there's always more to get and it's never enough. Sex is a disappointing God only because you may be not getting enough with enough people or the right people or the people that you really wish you could. Experiences always end up fading just into memory. Our functional gods will always disappoint us. You see, what we worship determines where we find our identity. It's quite deep. It's the place where we look for real meaning in life and where we think we're going to find true lasting pleasure and happiness. But here's the thing, if we seek our identity by worshipping the wrong things, then it'll destroy us. So let's think about body and beauty. If you worship body and beauty, you'll always end up feeling ugly and aging. Because you'll always see somebody out there you'll compare yourself to somebody who's younger, who's more beautiful, who's fitter, who's got more muscles than you. You know, the studies have found that women check out other women more than they do men. In other words, they spend more time concerned about what other women are wearing and how much cellulite they have and things like that. Studies have also found that women check themselves out in a reflection 8 times a day. That's almost as many as some of my sons do. You know, that whether it's in mirrors or cars or shop windows or phones. And I suspect many of us can relate to that. And yet, a stunning figure, 94% of women will tell you that they don't like what they see. They'll find something dissatisfaction. And I've got to say, I can't imagine it's that different with men. You see, their sense of identity is crushed by every reflection. We've seen that coming out with a lot of the stuff that's going on with Facebook at the moment. The Facebook know that things like Instagram and other things like that are actually destroying people's self-image instead of building it up. If you worship popularity, what about that? Well, then you're at the mercy of everyone's opinion of you. Did they like your Facebook post or not? Or your Instagram pic? Continually seeking validation of your self-worth from whether somebody's given you a thumbs up or not. And this really is affecting people. What about money and things? If you worship money and things, you'll never have enough. And the more that you have, the less content you will be. Do you know that the rate of clinical depression, anxiety, things like that are skyrocketing? You do know that. You know, it is broadly known and broadcast in the media that we're facing a mental health crisis. There's so much dissatisfaction. And so our culture finds itself faced with this odd question that we're in the times of the greatest prosperity ever, but it's led to our greatest unhappiness ever. What we worship determines our identity. And our false worship is only going to disappoint and endanger us. And this is not just a modern problem. Okay, so a man who lived 3,000 years ago, for instance, he had everything, including 700 wives and 300 girls on the side, concubines, right? Kind of an ancient Hugh Hefner, but he was absolutely loaded as well. And this is what he writes in Ecclesiastes chapter 2. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. Chasing after the wind. You can imagine that, chasing after the wind. You try to grab hold of it and it's a futile activity. It always slips through your fingers. So a man with all the wisdom and wealth and sex and success, power and pleasure, reputation, he sits there and says, there must be more to life than this. This is meaningless. What about a more recent experience? Jim Carrey, the famous comedian and actor, he's got this great quote. He says, I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they can see that it's not the answer. Here's a guy who has what this world has to offer, and he goes, man, I wish everyone could get there so you could work out it's not the answer. And so this brings us to the issue of God. See, bound up in our desire to be happy is that we want our lives to matter, to have meaning, to have significance and purpose. But have you ever asked ourselves or yourself, why? Why should our lives matter? Many in our community believe only in the material world, really what you can touch. That we're the product of random chance. We're accidents who found ourselves lucky to be here, who live, die, and then rot. We're just a bag of chemical reactions. That's the sum of who you really are. So Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist, he said, DNA neither cares nor knows. DNA just is. And we dance to its music. Well, if that's true, why should our lives have any meaning at all? If there is no personal and purposeful creator to give them meaning, then it's just existence. If DNA just is, then we're alone in the universe, an advanced species that needs food, water, and to reproduce. And then we die. Or is it true that there is more to life than this? Do you think there is more to your life than just chemical reactions and electrical impulses? Is there more to who you are? See, everything within us wants there to be. Why? Well, the good news is that Jesus actually says, yeah, you know what, there really is meaning. And that brings me to the question of, well, what's Jesus got to do with the truly good life? Well, Jesus makes this massive claim. He claims to be the only one who can offer the good life that we all desire. He says the pursuit of true happiness with our God is tiring, it's frustrating, and it's ultimately hopeless. Now, I don't know where you are with the God question, but imagine for a moment that there is a creator and that he's good and that he's kind and he intends for us, his creation, real life, this good life that's satisfying and full. Well, Jesus' point is very simple. If you are cut off from this life-giving God, it doesn't matter what you try to fill the gap with. It's never going to work because something irreplaceable is missing that's fundamental to what good life is all about. True worship of the ultimate being is being replaced by error and ignorance of him. You're kind of like a flower in a vase that's disconnected from its life source. And so you might look pretty for a while or feel like you're doing okay at the moment, but you're dying. I want to show you some of Jesus' words for yourself in the Bible. It's John chapter 10. And Jesus is speaking to a crowd of people, and he's using a figure of speech where he compares people to sheep. I don't think he means that we're dumb like sheep, just that we need good direction. This is what he says. He says, very truly, I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I've come that they might have life and have it to the full. The good life. The full life. Life that actually has meaning and purpose and significance, because not just about here and now. It's not just about the material. Here's the first thing to notice about this life. The first thing is that this truly good life begins now. But it actually goes beyond this life into eternity. Have a look at chapter 10, verses 27 to 28. My sheep listen to my voice, I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they shall never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hands. Listen to that. Eternal life means a lot of things. But it can be summed up as really life as God has always intended it to be. The best. One that's beyond the pain and the brokenness of this life. The second thing is to notice about this life is that Jesus makes himself the key to gaining it, right? So notice what he says there in sentence 9. I am the gate for the sheep. You can picture that, can't you? He's the way into the pasture that the sheep have got to go through to get there. The way into good life forever is through Jesus, is what he's saying. And notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say, I am one of many ways to this life. But I am the way to this life. You know, later on in John's Gospel, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no one comes to the Father except through me. No one. That is a huge claim. Jesus puts himself in a category totally unique among all spiritual leaders. You know, for example, Buddha, he claimed to teach the way to enlightenment. Muhammad claimed to be a prophet of God. But Jesus' claim stands on his own. He says, I am the truth and the life in the flesh. He claims that he has the power of God to give real life to whomever he chooses it. See how it all rests with him? It's why he's been called the man that you can't ignore. And if you want to retain any credibility, you've got to do something with Jesus, right? You've got to work out. You might decide that he's crazy. You might decide that he's a liar. You might decide, actually, he is who he claims to be. But you can't just ignore him because he doesn't let you. This is exactly what a famous author, a guy who you've probably heard of, C.S. Lewis, the guy who wrote the Narnia stuff, and he wrote it once like this. A man who was merely a man and said the sorts of things Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic, on the level with the man who says he's a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make a choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or that he's a madman or something worse. Jesus doesn't kind of give us he's just a good guy kind of option. So let's wrap this up. Let me try and pull this together. Truth matters. It matters in physics. It matters in medicine. We can't function as a society thinking that truth just morphs and changes all the time unless the signs that we put up tell the truth, right? Unless the justice system and the courtrooms are concerned for truth, nothing works. Truth has to matter. Our relationships don't work unless they're based on truth. And here's the thing, Jesus says the truth about the good life is to be in a relationship with him by worshipping him. That means centering your life around him. That's the only way to find pleasure, happiness, meaning. How does he do that? How does he give us this life? Well, we'll look at that in more detail over the next few weeks. But we get a hint of it in sentence 11 there, right? It's this amazing paradox that Jesus' death is the key to our life, the good life, the full life. Friends, these are massive claims. They deal with life and death issues, your life and death issues, mine. All right, they're too big to just ignore. They're too significant to dismiss. So you've got to do something with Jesus. If he's not telling the truth, he's not a good man. He's actually an evil man who's deceived billions. But if he is telling the truth, then that changes everything. So I'll leave you with this question. Who do you think Jesus was or is?
Okay. Yeah, well, Dave, so you left us with that question, who do you think that Jesus is or Jesus was? But what are some of the common answers that you've heard to that some of the people, some people watching might be thinking?
As you might imagine, over the years, I've heard many opinions on who Jesus is. The most common one I think I mentioned in that talk is that there's very few people that would say that Jesus was bad. I think most people you would talk to would say, even if that he needs to be respected, right? Like he must have, even if they don't know much about him, they will go just by reputation. He must have been a pretty important person.
Yeah.
Lots of people consider him to be God. Others consider him to be somebody that lived their life by. So certainly the vast majority of people think that he's someone to be respected. Although I think a lot of them would go either he's just a person from history that it's all blown up about. Others might say he's God, but not actually know what that means, and it has no impact on their life. The one that I do get sometimes is people who say, "Oh, Jesus didn't exist." I do get that one a few times, and all I can say to that is that it's just factually wrong. It's one of those kind of frustrating, you know, when there's something you actually know about and you know what the evidence is and stuff like that. When you go, come on, you know, like. No credible historian from the time thinks that Jesus didn't exist, right? They're just, if you're going to rule out Jesus in the existence thing, you're ruling out. So there are so many people that we never debate about that we've got far less evidence than we have about Jesus. So if you're there going, oh, can I know whether he exists? You bet he did. He is a fact of history. Where he lived is a fact of history. All of that sort of stuff. It doesn't hold water that he doesn't. But most people would say he's just he's a reasonable person, and some say much more. Some would say he's a prophet, and then all the grades up from there.
Yeah, well, one of the questions that comes out of that sometimes people have, though,
Yeah.
is that, well, is it possible that, Jesus back in, he definitely was a real person. He was back around, there at 0 BC, etc., around that time. But he was just a normal person. Maybe he did some cool stuff. But then it was, over the hundreds and thousands of years later that people look back and started making things up about him.
Yeah,
is
like
that possible?
The Da Vinci Code kind of evolution of an idea that he started off as a remarkable person, and then they told their kids to revere this remarkable person, and then they told their kids, and sooner or later it kind of got out of control, and you end up with Jesus that people are worshipping as a god when he was never like that. Look, that is not a rare thought. It was a particularly prominent, even in church circles in the 1800s and after that, where people were trying to question everything like that. The bottom line is that people in the first century thought that he was God. So it was made up by monks in the Middle Ages. Just doesn't fly. And I've seen with my own eyes one of the proof of it. If you go over to Israel, you go to the Sea of Galilee where Jesus did a lot of his stuff. You can actually go to the house where some of the miracles that are written in the Gospel of Mark and others were actually happened, right? And they've got graffiti, I've seen it, graffiti on the walls of these first century houses that talk about Jesus as being Lord. And that's not just an honorific title when you're in Israel. You call someone the Lord Jesus and you set up a shrine to worship him in Israel, you're saying he's more than just a man, and that graffiti is dated from the mid-1st century. So we're talking about 10 or 20 years after the events that the Gospels describe, and they're already talking about him as God in Israel. Now, the Bible would just tell you that they were saying there was God from the word go, because he rose from the dead, and hundreds of people witnessed it. It was made up by monks in the Middle Ages, or it just took a few hundred years for him to be considered to be a god, is just not true.
No, that's helpful. Thanks, Dave.
You could decide that they were wrong, but they said it. He was believed to be God at that, in which case the other side of that is you've got to come to terms of why. Why would they hold somebody to be God and be willing to risk persecution and death for that testimony?
Yeah.
Anyway, I could go on forever and I won't.
Well, guys, you can keep sending through questions. If we don't get the chance to answer it tonight, we might be able to next week. So feel free to send them through. But we've got another question. So Dave, you mentioned that Jesus calls himself the only way to God.
Yeah.
That seems pretty arrogant, doesn't it?
Well, I think that's a valid critique, if it's not true. So if you're not God and you say you are, it's like that C.S. Lewis quote, the Lord Liar lunatic sort of thing. You can't get away with Jesus and saying he was a good bloke if he's a good bloke who said you should worship me as a god. If that's not true, he's either crazy and thought he was God, or he knew he wasn't God and was trying to deceive people. You can't have it all of those ways, right? But at the same time, the same critique is made of Christianity when we say that what Jesus says to us, that he is the way, the truth, and the life. And we say, no, there is only one way to God, and that is through Jesus. And say, isn't that arrogant? Again, it's only arrogant if truth is relative and you can just make it up as you go along. And then why isn't your mythology as good as anybody else's mythology? That works if it's just a bunch of stories that is your cultural tradition that you hold to because you like it and it's been passed on down the generations. Then to say yours is the only way is a bit rough. But if it's true and the living God who made the universe has revealed himself as one person, as Jesus Christ, and you say that he isn't God, well, that's pretty arrogant. It just drives the question, and this is something we'll talk about over the weeks. It just keeps driving the question to who you think Jesus is. And if he is that guy, or if he isn't that guy, and that's why it's worth doing the investigation.
Well, that does lead on to another question we have, though, which is, well, okay, so all this investigating. If God is really there, if God is God, why doesn't he just reveal himself to me? You know, well, like, why can't I go like, you know, God, if you're really there, do this great thing right in front of me?
Yeah. So why make us sort of hunt after?
Yeah. Why do we have to investigate? Surely it should just be obvious, right?
Yeah. There's a way. And I want to say this is actually an important thing to think through. Now let's postulate for the moment that there is a God who made the universe, right? That's what we're talking about. So you've got a God who's created the heavens and the earth, who is the owner of everything. And then I want you to then imagine a being that he's created sitting there going, prove yourself, God. It's not for me to search for you. You should just go and reveal yourself to me. I shouldn't have to give you the moment's time unless you can come up and turn up on my doorstep and prove yourself to me. If you actually think about that for a minute, there's something breathtakingly arrogant about that. For a created being to demand that the God who made them prove himself to them. There's a little bit where we as human beings have got to kind of woe it a little bit and go, what am I demanding of God? But here's the amazing thing. He did it. Right? So, and again, you know how we keep saying, it keeps driving back to Jesus, right? So Jesus actually did that. God said, he in a sense, he's accommodated our limited knowledge and the world we live in, and he's revealed himself to us. He's spoken in the words of Scripture, and he actually turns up in the flesh in Jesus Christ. And if God turned up in front of you and go, well, how would I know he was God? Maybe I'd expect him to do some things that would demonstrate that he's God. Well, go read what Jesus did. That's precisely what happened. And many people did believe him, but you know what? Even when he does turn up right in front of people, even though he does things that no human being can ever do, some people believe him and others still won't because it doesn't suit what they want for their life. It challenges their rule over their own life. It actually is confronting. So I would say God has been so wonderfully gracious as to reveal himself to us. He's done it in Jesus, so go check him out and see whether that's the God you're going to worship.
Yeah, well, like something you said there does lead on to another question that we have, though, which is, okay, so if it's that, you mentioned sometimes it just doesn't fit into our life. It doesn't, well, those facts don't match where I see my life going, etc. Some people watching, and I know that I've heard from people, is it, well, there's a feeling that I'm not missing out on anything. My life's pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm having lots of fun. I'm making lots of money. I'm not missing out on anything. I'm pretty happy. Well, why would I try and supplement that or try and be convinced about something when I've got everything?
Yeah. I had a friend who, when I was doing my science degree, did geology with me, and he actually said exactly that to myself and a friend where we were talking to him, and he just said, "I don't think I need God, really. My life's fine." And there's a point where you go, well, at this point in time, that might be your experience. You might not feel like you're missing anything, but a couple of realities is you wait. No one's life is without suffering. If you're not suffering now, just wait. It'll happen. And this is not me to be a downer on everything. It's just called life, right? Life will, sooner or later, it will hit you in the face. And at the end of the day, you can be the fittest, most wealthy person, and your heart's going to stop one day, and your brain's going to be starved of oxygen, and you're going to die. That's happened to everybody, and it's going to happen to you. And at the end of the day, you will either close your eyes and cease to exist, or you'll be confronted with the fact that existence goes on, and that there is a God that you've rejected all your life because you preferred your comforts, and you're going to meet him. Now, that will happen, or it won't happen. All I would say is that if someone who says their life is great and fine and I don't feel like any pressing need to look after anything because my life is comfortable at the moment, I'd say, well, are you going to bet your life on that? Is looking and checking out the claims of Jesus that inconvenient and costly that you're willing to bet your life that not bothering to do it is going to be worth it? Because if he is who he said he is, then he's saying, actually, you're going to face, you're accountable to the God that exists, and he's going to hold you to account. And at the end of the day, he's going to ask questions of you, not the other way around. So I'd just say is there are plenty of people who go, you know what, if I decide to look into Christianity, it's not because I'm feeling like there's a glaring hole in my life, but because I just recognise that I need to know what the answer is to this question: is there a God? Because if there is a God, then I need to come to terms with him. So I think I'd just say that it's not uncommon, especially in a country like ours, to go, I'm feeling fine at the moment and life's all good. But life will change, and at the end of the day, even if life doesn't happen and you just float, you get to that Jim Carrey quote that we had when he said, you'll work out that it doesn't work and it's not all that it's cracked up to be. And you will face that God in the end. So I just encourage you, what's going to cost you to look? But if you're kind of watching online, you are looking. And so I hope you just keep asking those questions and keep searching. I think it's the way of integrity.
Well, we're coming to the end of our night tonight. I'm really looking forward to next week because next week we're moving on to another massive question about, well, what's actually the big problem in our world? Well, like, what is the biggest problem? What is wrong in our world? Because I think we all know that there is something wrong. We all know that there must be some problem. And next week we're going to explore, okay, what does Jesus say that problem is? And why should we listen to him? And I think the really great thing is, what's the solution? Is there a solution to the big problem in our world? I'm really looking forward to that. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. We'll head off. Hope you have an awesome
great evening. See you later
next week.
Bye.